Hello and welcome to the belated 100th episode of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I know, we'll get to that in a second, Aaron. We'll get to that in a second. For anybody who's not watching our YouTube channel, we've come on tonight. Why aren't you, first off? But we've come on tonight to kind of a surprise showing from John Ford. I should introduce everyone who's here. I'm your host, Marty. Alongside tonight, I have John.
Hello.
And Aaron.
Hey.
No Dave tonight. He's on the sick list. Not the same sick list that he was on last week, but a different sick list this week, which we'll get to as well.
He's now at
Let's be honest, last week
hangovers last 2 weeks.
It's taken a while.
Hooch is crazy.
Here, that's a new tradition. I'm all for that, Hooch.
Well, we'll all in due course, Aaron. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's introduce the podcast and have a quick back to what we're talking about with John. For everybody who's not watching the YouTube video, John has appeared tonight in a matching jersey to the one I'm wearing. So we all know that. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, you all know that I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and John's actually a Preds fan, but for some reason tonight he's came onto the podcast also wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. It kind of threw me. Bandwagon. We are going to talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Jersey.
You should go and get your one. You need an alternative team, obviously. We will talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs. Because there's been a lot going on, and the action is starting to heat up there in the first round of the Stanley Cup, so we will get to that as well. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. We have gained a lot of new followers on our social media after the playoff final weekend, so if you're new to our podcast, you're very welcome. We hope you enjoy listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube channel and YouTube video. Our podcast itself is for anybody who doesn't know and who's new around here, the podcast itself takes the form of 3 periods: period 1, period 2, and period 3, just like a normal hockey game. And we then have some overtime as well, thrown in at the end for additional questions and any other stories stuff, but we'll explain as we go along. The podcast is also what's the best way to describe it, lads? Probably like a magazine style.
We always call it the Loose Women of Hockey.
Loose Women of Hockey. So we will talk loosely around different teams and stuff around the league. We obviously are affiliated with the Belfast. We're affiliated.
When did that happen?
Joe Ford. We are. We obviously have teal glasses on this podcast. We are Belfast Giants fans, but we do cover all hockey from across the UK. Let's get to it, guys. Let's do a quick synopsis, I suppose, a summary or a roundup of the season's come to an end. We officially were at the playoff final weekend. The playoff final weekend ended in the way we hoped it would do, and the Belfast Giants took the third trophy that was up for grabs, being the playoff final weekend champions, champions, taking away that last piece of silverware of the year, the triple champions, Grand Slam, whatever you want to call it. Boys, the weekend itself, obviously we covered it during our time over there. We put in some sound bites, and some of our reviews of the games are on our SoundCloud account if you want to go back and listen to any of that. But I mean, what a weekend. It was just let's start with the weekend itself first before we just kind of finish off with a kind of a general review of the season itself. But the playoff weekend, John, you come now with a media pass, following the Belfast Giants on and off the ice there.
I'm surprised that's not what he's wearing, to be fair.
I'm surprised
to be wearing that and nothing else.
If it was any bigger, it would be the only thing I'd be wearing. Just if anyone didn't know, I was media at playoffs.
He comes with his own media pass now. I mean, John, from your, let's just go straight to you. Let's ask the question to you. I mean, playoff final weekend was amazing. Belfast Giants won. I mean, us in the stands, me, Aaron, and Dave were just elated. We were completely going insane. But you're on the ice. I mean, what was the experience like?
Listen, the whole weekend was absolutely fantastic. Just to bleat on a little bit at the very start, I want to say massive thank you to the league for the opportunity, to Luke and his team for the hospitality, and just how slick everything ran over the weekend. You don't realise how everything gets run and how well things are run. And look, I know we are the first ones to jump down the league's throat when something goes wrong. that was a good weekend. Whether you were down in the stands, up in the media boxes, whether you were on the ice, everything ran absolutely fantastically. So I just want to put out there my thanks for the access and the opportunity that I was given. It was fantastic. The whole weekend was brilliant. I got to split my time really fantastically between down with you guys in the stands and covering a couple of games from up in media. Just incredible. Absolutely incredible. And look, let's jump forward to Sunday, because we know what happened on Sunday. We got to about, I think, 5 minutes to the end. I think the Giants were 2 up at that point. And I said to you guys, right, I'm going to run down. Ended up running down to ice side to the Zamboni door with Finn and Fanula, which was very surreal, let's be honest. Stood with them when the empty net goal went in as well, and yeah, I celebrated the win with the mascots, which is very, very weird. Then the doors opened and I went for it. I went out, got an amazing experience getting to be on the ice for that moment. Seeing the guys come off the bench as well, up to Besco, everyone in the corner, what is effectively the NIC's BC boomerang over in that corner, was absolutely amazing to watch that. The interaction between the players and the fans, the coaching staff, absolutely everything was just amazing. And to cap it all off, I didn't just get to stand and watch everything, I then got to lift the Grand Slam trophies. I got to lift the Challenge Cup, the league trophy and the playoff trophy, and even better, William Cherry took a photo of me. I mean, lads, it doesn't get any better than William Cherry taking a photo of you on the ice with the trophies.
No, you had a.
So
you had a...
I do have to apologise though, because I didn't realise the way that William was taking the photo. So I have a photo, and I want to say thanks as well to Patrick Smith, because he grabbed my phone and took a couple of photos which are amazing, and have you guys in the back. But the really, really nice HD photo is taken from just slightly below eye level, so it blocks all of you except for Mark.
Mark's
Yeah, Mark.
I got he's a special person to this.
Our most loyalist fan. Our most loyalist fan.
Loyalist fan.
And also appeared on the podcast technically as well.
Made his
Came and joined
debut.
us. Made his debut. Which we have to say thank you to Mark for that, because I know Mark, I know you'll be listening, but I know you're nervous coming on and having a chat with us. But hopefully we didn't make it too stressful for you. I know John tried to throw you a curveball at the end, but
that's his first time, not his last time.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get you back on again. Maybe next season we'll try and get you on the actual episode. Maybe. Aaron, let's take it away from John, because too much attention has been put on John so far. Let's talk about our experience in the crowd and in the stands. I mean, is this your first playoff win? I'm guessing. I think you weren't there for the last playoff win.
No, and this was my first playoff win, and every time we do our predictions, I'm always like, when we're trying to who's gonna be against, and I'm always like, oh man, see Cardiff Devils, man. I always have these flashbacks about the Cardiff Devils, and this time it didn't come true. It was amazing.
Yeah, my only disappointment with the game was that the Cardiff Devils didn't score one more goal, because my bet was that they would score it would be 4-2, not 4-1. So
and wasn't that my prediction as well when we done the?
It was, yeah. It was actually, yeah, it was. And I just the whole atmosphere. I mean, the whole weekend was just phenomenal. Even, do you know what? We went along to the Chunder Cup game, the third and fourth place game, and even though it seemed to be a bit more like they took it a bit more serious this year or something, I don't know, but it was also it was a generally good game, because it was Jono's final game, and I think because it was Jono's final game, there was a bit more thing about it. I know there's very little there was little to no contact whatsoever. Actually, I don't think there was any contact really throughout the whole game, but it was an enjoyment to watch. And do you know what, it was special at the end of that game to see that guard of honor as well for the Sheffield players to do the guard of honor as Jono was skidded off the ice with Connolly obviously as well, and just I don't know if we should go down the route of getting your thoughts, guys, on what could only be described as probably a big middle finger almost to Jono from his own coach from the Sheffield Steelers. I mean, I don't know. Fox disappeared and didn't seem to.
Well, let's be honest.
I don't know if he came back on. I don't think he did.
Let's be honest. I don't think he came back on, but I remember when the final buzzer went and we all kind of looked over at the benches, and the two head coaches, Aaron Fox and Corey Nielsen, did seem to disappear very quickly. However, Corey Nielsen did come back out, and we saw him on the ice, and he shook hands with Jono and with Brendan. Obviously, he's coached both of them with GB as well, so he's got history with the guys. I'm not entirely sure what's happened there. I obviously got to interview Aaron Fox up in the media scrum after the game against Cardiff, and he had nothing but good things to say about Jono. Now, whether that was just in the public face, I don't know what's happened. So far, there's been no indication that Aaron Fox is out of a job. In fact, from everything that he was saying over the weekend and everything coming out of the Steelers, it would appear that Aaron Fox is secure for another season, which I think if you're in that orange contingent, I think you're potentially quite surprised at that. We do know
that's
that
what
the
we
owner of
thought.
that,
We thought that he did just disappear because we thought that was it, didn't we?
maybe he had a flight to catch.
I don't know. It was a bit unusual for that to be the response,
Here.
and I think
Do you know who else didn't hang about? Peyton Jones. How's it going, big lad?
no, he was out of there like a shot. But yeah, I don't know. I suppose I think that was a bit of a story that came out of that weekend. And a lot of people were talking about that and what that meant, and if whether or not it was a snub or if it was like just sheer disrespect or not. And I think that's something. I mean, their own fans can talk about it themselves and make up their own decisions of what they think. I think it seemed a bit disrespectful, but
listen, we all know that the players don't really think much of that game. They do it because the league expects it of them. And make no mistake, while we say that was potentially the most impressive third place game, it was in no way an entertaining or good game to watch. What was the scoreline?
I had fun.
It didn't. To start with, it did look like both teams were taking it really seriously, and actually you would have thought that nobody had been drinking the night before, but after about maybe 3 or 4 minutes of ice time for everyone, they all started feeling the night before, and you could actually tell that most of them were still hanging. But look, coaches don't enjoy those games either. It's not competitive. It doesn't bring anything to it. Like nothing's ever going to change because we say it, and like the Challenge Cup's a prime example of that. Nothing's going to happen there. It's a bloody awful competition. But there's a 100th episode and I still talked about the Challenge Cup, even though we're at the first point of the year just about where it's not actually happening.
Aaron, you were going to say something there?
I'm rambling.
Yeah, no. Speaking of that game, I didn't need a media pass. I actually got to speak to one of the players from the Panthers. I got to speak to Zian McKenzie in the queue to the toilet of all places. And it was his first game. He'd been training with the Panthers since November, and that was his first game on ice, and he got a point.
There you go.
Was he doing up at the concourse at the toilets during the game?
It was it was so I was dandering to the loo, and there was this guy in a suit, and he was just like kind of walking around, like obviously walking around on a podcast, doing the motions on a podcast doesn't help. walking down the concourse, cool as a cucumber, and then I was like, "All right, you're right there," and then we just started talking in the queue to the loo. And he was like, "Yeah, my name's Ian McKenzie. I'm one of the players."
I think I'm with Marty here. Okay. If I saw somebody acting weird around the toilets, the last thing I would do is go and chat to them.
Yeah. Well, I handed him one of your business cards, so he's got.
Oh my word! I feel like we should be. I feel like we should put in we should say it now that what happened at playoffs should stay at playoffs. A number of life choices were made that we can't get back. Yes, John is holding one of our elusive business cards, which were.
Not if you're in that. They weren't elusive if you're in that dirty corner outside bunkers. No. Thanks.
I'm slightly concerned that we were still going to get a letter from or an email from Nottingham Borough Council to say you have been littering around Nottingham. We are charging you £1,000.
All the bin men in Nottingham are listeners now. So
no, it was a fantastic weekend overall, and obviously
that was not an easy final either. Like
no,
the first two periods,
it was at the end.
At
Well,
the end, final period, but those
Nah,
first
yeah.
two
It
periods.
was a third period game. It was a third period
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
I don't think for 2 periods outside of the period breaks, I don't think I spoke to you guys.
No.
I couldn't.
tough.
I was sitting edge of my seat. It was a fantastic game. Really, really good, and absolutely loved it. That is the way that you want to win a championship. I feel really sad saying it, but you don't want to win a championship the way that we did against Fife in the Challenge Cup. What you want is a game like that one.
Yeah. Great weekend.
yeah.
Great new friends as well. Like, we talked about the teams, but like that weekend, just meeting everyone. Like, we met some amazing fans from who did we meet in the when we were
Coventry.
having breakfast? Flames. They
Flames
were
fan-
a great crowd.
Flames fans,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the Blaze, the Blaze fans that we met in
Blaze
bunkers as
Soros.
well.
We met Soros.
Soros, we met Soros as well.
And Marty, you made friends with a pineapple at some point in Saltbox for some reason.
Yeah.
Again, these are stories that we're supposed to stay away from the podcast.
I have that on video.
Marty,
We should-
speaking of
we should
things that
post
probably-
No.
Speaking of things that probably shouldn't make it to the podcast, Marty, what did you do in Saltbox as soon as Besco walked in?
Oh yeah.
It wasn't as soon as he walked in. It wasn't as soon as he walked in, but look, listen, me and Besco were having a really nice conversation outside the front of Saltbox about our favourite baked goods and what his favourite baked goods are, and talking about things like Biscoff, brownies and everything else. And obviously I got a bit animated with my pint in my hand, and I accidentally kind of
You swelled him.
threw it on him.
You swelled Besco.
Yeah, I kind of threw
See if he
beer
doesn't
all over
resign.
Besco.
See if he doesn't resign.
It's your fault, mate.
It was when he said, "You do realise these are the only shoes I have with me, and I have to go home in these." And I was like, "Oh, sorry."
I love Joe's tweet. What did Joe tweet you the next day? Didn't you put a tweet up? And she replied, "At least you didn't throw a pint over it or something like that."
Yeah, that's
Oh, Joe was absolute fire the first couple of days after playoffs because I put something on and she just put on, sure, have you got a business card?
We won't talk about. Let's not talk about too much about Twitter after playoffs because about a certain Belfast Giants player didn't hold back on Twitter from Monday morning. Just
fantastic.
boom.
The idea, I'm sure, around the league, as soon as those replies were starting to come out from him, people were just sitting back going, "Oh, hang on, I just wanted to troll you. I didn't want you to reply to me."
Yeah.
While the other players
everyone else was like, "Give me some popcorn, please."
While the other players around the league were like, "Wait, can we do that now? Are we allowed to do this now?" I'm just like,
End of season, Dops can't do anything to them.
Why not? Guys, before we move on to our regular scheduled viewing or listenership or whatever it might be, I don't know. I just want to kind of get your final thoughts on the 2022-2023 Elite League season. I mean, generally overall, obviously the Giants took away all silverware, so obviously we're happy. And although the Belfast Giants took away all 3 trophies this year, it doesn't necessarily mean that the season itself wasn't an exciting season. I mean, I think we'll all agree the season itself overall was a pretty exciting season compared to some of the previous seasons. John, I mean, this season alone, obviously we've talked about it before. We've seen the Guildford Flames were right up there in the running for the league. We've seen the likes of Fife Flyers hit the final for the Challenge Cup. Yes, the playoff final weekend was again the Belfast Giants versus the Cardiff Devils, but the Cardiff Devils, obviously had a bit of a rocky year this year, obviously ending 4th place in the league. I mean, the season itself, I mean, what's your thoughts in terms of this compared to other seasons?
Well, I mean, you said it. Like, we look at it with teal-tinted spectacles. It was a fantastic season. We've done it. We're one of only 2 teams to win the proper Grand Slam. Nottingham fans, I don't care what you say, you didn't win a Grand Slam. There was another trophy up for grabs that year. It was a Grand Sham. But the Flyers hitting the Challenge Cup final, that's fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't see that franchise building from that. That's really, really sad because that's a team. Now, I've heard rumours that there's potential big changes coming in Fife, that more behind the scenes than it is sort of front of house and on the bench, which is a real shame. I think that organisation needs change. has been a complete washout if you're a Sheffield Steeler or Nottingham Panthers fan. I think you're massively disappointed. Panthers fans especially, that's a run of seasons now where it's been really, really poor. And they've walked away with nothing over the last few seasons.
7th in the league.
Yeah, not great. That's not where they want to be. But we're going to chat about the Panthers later on, and they're going to hope for change coming next season. Sheffield, higher finish in all the other competitions than Nottingham. You know, their biggest rivals in UK hockey. But it's still a disaster of a season. They didn't make a single final through the season, didn't meet the Challenge Cup final. They got hammered by Fife in the Challenge Cup to reach the final. Playoffs, yes, you could say that they were... Look, it's an overtime win for Cardiff, and you could sit here and chat about it being the referees who won the game for Cardiff if you want, but at the end of the day, Sheffield, you lost in semi-final again. You didn't make the final. You didn't have a shot. Coventry were weird. Coventry looked like they were really strong coming into the season, and I think Guildford took everyone by surprise by sort of the leap that they took on. And it's really weird. As soon as Guildford started doing that, I stopped paying attention to Coventry.
Yeah,
I don't
agree.
know why. I don't know why I did that, and just nothing that Danny Stewart did with that team this year really excited anyone. I think they were like a real... I don't know, am I right in saying they were like a Doug Christensen team this year? They did all the right things, but nothing happened for them. They stayed that middle ground team.
Coventry was a weird one this year. I mean, I think you're right. They started off so strong. Our attention, everybody's focus was on Coventry at the start, and then Flames took off, and then all of a sudden people were like, whoa, let's change focus on not looking at Coventry. Let's look at... But it's funny because then the Blaze had that kind of... They do that thing where they kind of went... And then all of a sudden, they had a
pre-Christmas drop,
and then post the last 2 months, they had that new signing after the signing of that new goaltender there. Things started increasing, and then they were taking points left, right, and centre. I mean, it's right to say Coventry probably again for another year. Coventry probably helped the Giants secure parts of the league because they at one point Coventry took out massive points out of Sheffield and took massive points out of the Guildford Flames whenever that new goaltender was signed. So again, we're thankful again to Coventry, whereas the second year running where we've got a league where Coventry kind of helped a wee tiny bit in some ways and they don't realise that they did it. So
Coventry helped, but I think they were victims of what was going on around them as well. The teams ahead of them were way ahead of them. The teams behind them were way behind them.
Yeah.
They were victims of being stuck in that middle no man's land for probably the last third of the season. Realistically, there was no silverware on offer for them. Their entire season was coming down to playoffs, really. And I said it before playoffs, before we even saw the quarterfinals. I'm pretty sure I said, I'm not going to listen back. Somebody can listen back and tell me what I said. I'm not going to spend the time doing it. But I'm pretty sure I said that Coventry would be a dangerous team because they've been gearing up for playoffs. They should have been gearing up for playoffs from January. That should have been what they were building to, and they clearly didn't do it, which is a real, real shame. But you talk about shames, let's talk about the Scottish teams.
I mean, I actually didn't put the story in for period one, but we'll talk about it maybe just in period one anyway, because someone remind me when we're talking about Glasgow. Obviously Glasgow, you have put in, so we obviously know Glasgow started off such a poor start to their season. It got worse as well as the season went on, but then they still ended up being the top team in Scotland.
Yep. Look, that's
not by much, though.
Not by much, but it's a reflection. It's not really a reflection on them. Yes, they rallied, and the squad that they had that stuck around after all the mess that was the start of the season in Glasgow, they did rally from a really, really poor start, and they were propped up by incredibly poor seasons in the league for Fife and Dundee. Really, really sad to see Dundee sitting rooted to the bottom by the end of the season, and it's also really sad to see Jeff Mason lose out on his first coaching job after just one season. But coming 10th, I've got to be honest, you can't expect to keep your job after that. Things have to change, and things are changing. I think we spoke last podcast about the change in coaching that's already coming. That was announced, I think, the day after the league finished.
Yep.
Fife, I've spoken at length through this season and other seasons about Fife. that is an organisation that needs change, or they need to finally accept that the Elite League is not for them, which would in itself be really sad to see Fife drop out of top tier hockey. Something drastic has to happen in Kirkcaldy. I'm sorry, but it does. Change needs to happen, and it needs to be wholesale. For the love of God, do something with the car park.
Before we move on, I've got two more questions or two more things just to talk about before we move on our attention on to other things. But guys, obviously the season, as we say, the season has now officially came to an end, and we're now officially in our off season here in the UK. Looking back at this season, guys, each of you, so John, I want you to go first. Give me one positive thing that's came out of this season. It can't be Giants related. Give me one positive Elite League thing that you think of that you can think of for this season. Something that you think has been really a positive step forward, or something positive that's came out of the Elite League this season.
One thing I think was a great positive was and granted it was an 11th hour change, was the league final, that league deciding game on Viaplay. The Belfast Giants, yes, you said it couldn't be Belfast Giants, they just happened to be there. The Giants Flames game, it was supposed to be on one of the pay for channels on Viaplay, and they changed it a couple of days before the game to put it on free because they knew how big that game could be for the game. So whether that was a decision by Viaplay, whether it was a decision by the league, or whether it was a combination of both, that was an inspired move. There's other stuff media-wise that we could talk negatively about, but I think that was a real positive. I think just in general, the league has conducted itself slightly better this season. I think we look slightly more professional this season, albeit a couple of tweets at the end of the season almost put pay to that.
Yep. Aaron, I'm going to ask you the same question. Is there anything that comes to mind for you, when you think about the season? Anything that you think is a positive step forward?
You're talking about the professionalism in the media. I'm going to go something a little bit closer to home. That way, this lad, we've had media credential. I think that it's not just. Yeah, there he is with his media pass.
Don't give him an excuse to show his pass off.
And he went to Canada once as well. If you haven't sorry.
I did go to Canada once. Do you want to hear about it?
No.
Yeah. No, I think what I'm going for is that one of the stories you were talking about, John, was that a lot of the guys up there, they were team focused media or whatever. Were we the only non-team focused podcast?
No.
Media
the guys from Chasing the Puck were there as well.
Oh, of course. Right.
And they were there, and so was Nicky Watt from 4000 Counting.
Okay, cool.
And chatting to some of the media guys, that was a real positive as well, was the fact that the league did. Now, we know that they previously opened up to us. We were supposed to have media accreditation in 2020, but this is the first time that they've really opened up to that, if you want to call it, second string media. And given those credentials to the likes of ourselves and the sort of fan production podcasts, if you like. Yes, I know Nicky Watt is a previous player. He's a retired player. And what the 4000 Counting guys do is absolutely fantastic. But it's mirroring what's done in the EIHL, because a lot of the media coverage that they get is either by guys who do it for the fun of it, or guys who maybe have a small affiliation or slight affiliation to a team. Thinking about Anthony here at Banners, who obviously Basingstoke, he's a Basingstoke guy, and he's asked us on Twitter, I see, what does he do when he's in hockey limbo next season, which is really sad to see. But you know what you do, Anthony? You come over here and you come and chat EIHL with us.
That's true.
I did promise that we'd have you on, and I do stick by that. We will have you on next season.
I do have plans for that, so I will be in touch with you, because I have plans for the start of the season. I'll talk to you boys about it too, because I don't think I've told you either. So we could talk about that. I have got plans.
But yeah, so that would be a fairly selfish one, that we got media credentials at playoffs. To be honest with you, as well as that, it was, what a season. Yeah. I don't even know if it was. I don't know if the Elite League done anything about it, but like, it was just a different season altogether. Like we've already talked about. We've had a whole season of talking about it. Guildford Flames, Sheffield Steelers being second and third. Like it's been a different season. Let's just.
I mean, Aaron, I would
What
echo
about
what
you?
you're saying. I mean, I would echo exactly what you're saying. This season itself, I don't know. There's been something about the feel of this season right across the league. We see it in the fact that numbers are up. More people coming to the game, more people seeing the game. We've seen those attendance figures that came out around last month that showed.
More than a million fans through the gates this season.
I mean, that's fantastic. So again, another real positive is the fact that like the attention and people wanting to actually come along to games. I mean, we've had sellouts in Belfast here. The whole last 2-3 months in Belfast was just like completely insane. I mean, we're going to come to it in the third period, but we're going to talk about the charity game that was last week, midweek charity game, end of season, and that was a sellout. I mean, we're going to come back to that as well. But I mean, in general, I think it's been a positive. The other thing I've said it's been a bit of a big positive this season, although some of them could do with some work here and there, is the fact that every single team now has a webcast, which you can now access, which. Again, this is the first season, I think, of all the teams having a webcast. So, again, great work there, ensuring that all teams have something. So, again, another good positive step. The last thing I want to talk about before we move on, and I swear this is the last thing we're going to talk about, just post-season. I wanted to get your thoughts before we move on. There was one other thing that happened over the playoff final weekend, and that was the awards night, which was presented on the Friday evening. Obviously,
no,
this was
wasn't. It was tweeted. It was tweeted.
presented on the Friday evening.
Were they in? Were they in the arena being presented this, or was it?
Some were, some
Really?
weren't.
Some were, some weren't. Some people weren't. Some people were in Nottingham, some weren't. But one thing I will come up with, there's a couple of ones. Obviously, we could go through and can have a look and see. Obviously, netminder of the year was Matt Greenfield, which was a good enough shot. I think it's a good enough.
It's not because let's be totally honest. How does your netminder of the year not make the first All-Star team?
Well. This is
Tyler
wait,
Bescorani,
hang on.
first All-Star team netminder, and he's not netminder of the year.
He can't be because he wasn't there. He wasn't there for the full season, so they can't really.
I don't care.
They were kind
He's
of.
a he won all 3 trophies. So he was
I know.
on the ice for all
I
3
know.
trophies.
Completely agree. Because the next question as well is then, how do you have your player of the year also not be your British player of the year, who's British? I mean, you got British player of the year, which is Ben O'Connor. Fair enough, playing for Guildford Flames, had a great season. But the player of the year overall was Scott Conway from the Belfast Giants, and he didn't get best British player of the year.
No, it's even better. Ben O'Connor. What position does he play? Defenseman. He's not even the defenseman of the year. It doesn't make sense.
No,
it's a nonsense.
And
it's complete nonsense.
I know these are voted on by players and coaching teams across the league.
GMs.
Coaches and GMs. Sorry. So obviously these choices were made. Some of them were just really I didn't understand at all. And the one thing I will say, and guys, don't I know, well, I think there was a lot of arguments at the time, but I think you can't deny it now. At the time when we were sitting on Friday night, I think it was, or Saturday morning, there was a lot of conversations around the Coach of the Year, which was given to Adam Keefe. And people were like, no, it should have been Adam because it should have been Guildford Flames, blah, blah, blah. Not anymore. Not when you get a treble and you get all the trophies. You can't argue with that.
You're right.
Here, one last thing, just before we move on. We didn't touch on it. And I think we should actually talk about Adam Keefe. When the Giants won the playoffs, incredible touch of class, the Ray Sawada sticker going onto the playoff trophy, and it also ended up on the other 2 trophies as well, through the sort of the celebrations on ice. Absolutely top class. Terrible news to hear about Ray Sawada, and top class to put that on. The coaching staff were all wearing Ray Sawada stickers on their lapels on the suits the whole weekend. So massive touch of class there.
Yeah, and we also we should say as well, just sticking with the Ray Sawada story, we should say also as well for the whole of the Nottingham, the whole of all the fans who were in Nottingham for that first game, and the 1 minute's noise or the 1 minute applause before the game in honour of Sawada as well. That was phenomenal to see as well, and everybody taking part in that. I think that was fantastic. And there was also one in the charity game there on Wednesday passed as well, the 12-minute mark of the first period. And again, goosebump minutes, goosebump, honestly. But I'm going to come back to a lot more goosebumps about that game itself in period 3. Guys, let's take a quick look at the Stanley Cup. Let's change focus. Let's move across the water. There's still hockey being played in the world. And I know our own domestic league is finished, and our focus now changes to our off-season and all of the rumours that will be coming out over the next few weeks. Well, hopefully some confirmed stuff soon enough in terms of signings. I know there was one signing today that was confirmed by the Elite League. I think that was for Dundee, but I'm sure there'll be more by the time it comes to our next recording. But there is hockey still being played in the world, and that is in the form of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. We're already in, I think we're around about maybe the 5th game for some. I think 5th game for most people, I think, maybe
Pretty
now.
much all.
Yeah, all
Which,
teams are...
in itself, no sweeps in the first round.
No, there hasn't been. That's what I was going to say. So let's take a quick look just at where things are and how things are shaping up. So obviously we know the Avalanche are up against the Seattle, and they're tied 2-2 in that one. Dallas are up against the Wild, and that's 2-2 in that one. The Golden Knights are up against Winnipeg, and it's 3-1 being led by the Vegas Golden Knights. The Oilers and the LA are tied at 2-2. Across the other side of the country, we have Boston playing against Florida, and that is currently being led by Boston 3-1. Toronto, are up against the Lightning, and they're currently leading the series 3-1 after what was, I'm going to say, the most exciting game. 2 really exciting games, but last night's game for anybody who's last night's game, which was Monday the 20, well, technically this early hours of this morning, so Monday the 24th April, Tuesday the 25th here in the UK. That game, I'm not going to lie, I said to you boys before we came on to the show, I watched the first 2 periods and Toronto were trailing 4-1 by the time I just went, it's done, I'm going to go to sleep because it was already 2:30.
You should have known, especially
should have,
after
but it was like
weekend,
it was 2:30 in the morning or whatever, and I was just like, you know what, I just 4-1, I was like, there's no way. And then I woke up this morning and looked at my alerts, and it was like, how did it end up 5-4 in overtime? But yeah, and I watched it back today, and what a game, what a final period and overtime period. I mean, anyway, sorry, moving on. Carolina are up against the New York Islanders, and that's currently 3-1 to Carolina. And then New Jersey are tied with the New York Rangers 2-2 there. We've got another 2 games to go. Some teams could do it in the next game. We know that Vegas could do it in the next game. Carolina could do it in the next game. Toronto could do it in the next game, and so could Boston. So it'll be interesting to see how things go with those. We didn't really do predictions, guys, at the start. But is there anyone so far you think, any teams there who are leading in their series that you're thinking didn't see that coming?
I don't really care about who's leading in the series. What I'm really upset about is the fact that Carolina are going to ruin what could be a 2-round New York grudge match, where you could end up with that city absolutely imploding and just never being the same again. The fact that you've got the Rangers and the Devils playing in the first round,
yeah,
they did quite well. I think they got through. They made it at least the second round.
Yep.
I can't remember, but no. The fact that it looks like the Isles, unless they rally and win the next 3 games, I'm really upset about the fact that New York isn't going to just explode and then implode on itself in the second round. Yeah. I will say though, I'm on the bandwagon, Marty. Like, there's a reason I'm sitting here wearing my charity dumper dive Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. It was a $5 in Belfast. Somebody obviously won post. Must have been after I lost to Boston, Marty. Somebody just absolutely lost it with the Leafs.
Probably, yeah.
Threw it into a charity shop. Look, I'm here for it. We've got Adam Keefe, who is a treble-winning coach this season, a Grand Slam winning coach. Sure, let's have Sheldon lift a wee bit of silverware too. Why not? Because let's be honest, he had nothing but praise for the Belfast Giants the night after the playoff win. So little touch of class there from Sheldon to know what the Belfast Giants do. And actually, let's just have a moment for the journalist who was interviewing the Toronto Maple Leafs coach and who knew that not only had we just won the playoffs, but it was a Grand Slam as well.
I actually don't want them to win for our own Adam Keefe, because I like, could you imagine that summer dinner that the family finally get together. And
No, because you see what happens is
no, hold on.
Sheldon brings 1 cup to drink out of. Adam sits there with 3 pints.
Yeah, but Adam sets down his. Yeah, Adam sets down his 2 wonky ones because obviously the Giants have broken them in some way.
Yes.
So he sets down his 2 wonky. He sets down his 3 cups, 2 wonky, 1 maybe slightly not less wonky. I know. Shh,
3
I know.
wonkies.
But anyway, he sets those down. He's like, ha ha ha. But then you come in with the Stanley Cup, and you're just like, boom. And you're like, here you go.
Let our Keith have his time.
Exactly. I'm excited. This is our last regular podcast of the season, shall we say? Obviously, we're going to move from fortnightly to maybe once a month, maybe just kind of do a bit of a roundup and see catch up during the off season, see how things are progressing, both signings and that stuff. But also then that way we'll be able to come back as well as the Stanley Cup starts to progress. So we'll be back probably at the end of May, and we'll get a bit of an idea of how the Stanley Cup is heading towards that final final stages of the Stanley Cup. So we'll keep an eye on it. I'm hoping that by the time it comes to our next recording that the Toronto are still in the running. But John, as you say, we're about to come up against if touch wood and all that. If Toronto do succeed in the next game and they take the series and they move on to the next round, which I'm hoping it looks like they're going to.
Listen, it's the second round.
Second round.
It's not a first round. It's not the Bruins in the first round. I'm saying it now. I think it's good money. Put a bet on the Leafs.
I'm just but it's our kryptonite. Boston is our kryptonite when it comes to Stanley Cup playoffs. So there's always that little bit of a but we will wait and see.
If after the season Boston have just had, like fastest to 100 points, most points in a regular season in the NHL franchise history. If there's any team after a season like that who would put them out, it should be the Maple Leafs.
It should be. I agree. This is really unnerving tonight. Sorry, John. This is really unnerving that you're. It's just there's something about it. It's just like, oh, okay. Shake it off. Guys, I think that's it for our roundup before we get stuck into the rest of our podcast.
We're only 40 minutes into the podcast.
We are indeed.
Period 1.
So with that, guys, what we'll do is we will get stuck into our period 1 of hockey. Okay, our period 1 is a roundup of hockey news from around the UK. A number of stories. Again, some of these are going to be just quick stories, but a number of stories obviously coming straight out of freshly off the playoff final weekend. The first one that kind of came out, which was on that Sunday of the playoff final weekend, I believe, was the fact that actually it was during, I think the game was in play at the time, or just before the game was due to start. But the Elite League and the Motorpoint Arena have confirmed that the playoff final weekend has been extended to be played at the Motorpoint Arena until 2029. Obviously, they've looked at it as a point of the place of, I suppose, it's a great city to hold it and host it. It's one of probably the only cities, and I would agree, it's probably one of the only cities that is set up in a way that allows for so many fans from right across the league to come together in one central area. I mean, I think the city itself is set up in a really good way around the arena. That means that there's, lots of stuff going on, food, drink, accommodation, everything's quite central around the arena. I mean, guys, are we surprised by this? I mean, I know there was some discussion, and I know some people always argue why is it always Nottingham, but I mean, we go away to Nottingham, we love it. I mean, any surprise there, John?
No. We spoke at length about. In fact, we spoke at length about this actually before the announcement was made over the weekend. And no, you look at the arenas that potentially could hold playoffs, and you're only talking 3. You're talking the NIC in Nottingham, the Motorpoint or whatever it's called or the Utility Arena in Sheffield, and the SSE Arena in Belfast. They are the only 3 that are of a size that you could host a weekend like that. The problem with Sheffield is location. It's not in the city centre. There aren't hotels around it. There aren't bars around it. It's not that central location. Belfast, look, we're a Belfast Giants bunch of fans here, and we love the SSE Arena. But Belfast, for as much as we love it, it's not Nottingham. It's to coin a phrase that was used this season by Sheffield fans, it's a logistical nightmare to get to Belfast. And look, if that's a logistical nightmare for one set of fans and a team to get there for a midweek game, like over a weekend, can you imagine trying to bring in 10,000 fans?
Awesome, though.
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know. From speaking from a Belfast point of view, my thoughts on it were, I don't think it's logistically going to be hard to get all of the fans to get to Belfast. I think we've got the boats and the planes and the flights and stuff. They're all easy enough to sort out. That's not the issue. I think what our main issue is, and again, I mean, we know 100% that if it was hosted in the SSE Arena, the SSE Arena staff, everyone behind the Giants and everything else would make sure they put on a fantastic show in terms of overall production. We know that would be. I'm not saying anything bad about Nottingham's production because I love the screen in the middle and everything else was done really quite well. We just know that Belfast puts a real show on when it comes to everything around it, and we know that would happen. But the only thing I do agree with this, especially after us being in Nottingham again and walking around Nottingham. But the fact, I mean, if you think about the apartments, the hotels, the food places, the 3 or 4 bars right around the arena there. If you look at Belfast and you look at the SSE Arena, you're gonna have to come in from over in the city, over from the city side, over to across the bridges, over to the SSE.
It's a 15-20 minute walk.
Yes, there's a couple of food places in and around the SSE. There's not enough bars. Would hosted people wouldn't be local. You pop out from the game during the period breaks or during the game, between the games, and you literally have 4 or 5 bars around the arena that you just go to and everybody's drinking around. There's nothing like that. It's not. There's nothing like that in Belfast that could do the same thing. And the same as Sheffield. If you've ever been to Sheffield, it's exactly the same. There's nothing. There's an entertainment complex over beside it, but again, it's like a cinema entertainment complex. It's not the same.
I don't think the flight and the boat thing's much of a. Is that an issue really?
I don't think it would be.
John, how much?
I think
how much was your train? It was more of a hassle for you.
But I think the issue.
Nottingham
I think
from
the issue
it was for us.
The issue is not so much with the fans. Put it out there. The issue is the logistics of bringing 3, maybe 4 teams. Let's say the Giants don't make it. You've got 4 teams coming over with all their gear, and yes, they do it all the way through the season and travel over. I just think it's. I'm not saying it won't ever happen in Belfast, because genuinely I think it will at some point. I think at some point the playoff final weekend will probably tour around. I think there's a massive opportunity to, once every 3 years, take it somewhere else. Once every 4 years, take it somewhere else. Take it to Sheffield, take it to Belfast. If for some reason none of the arena teams ever make it to playoffs one year, sure, take it to Coventry. Although you won't get Coventry because that's where they do the EIHL weekend. So take it to Cardiff. Whatever, you can get 5,000 fans in at Cardiff. And that's the biggest problem that the 6 other teams have, is 7 other teams, sorry, they just don't have the space. So I think there's an opportunity to do it, but yes, the biggest issue is what you've got around the arena, and nobody else has that city centre location the way that Nottingham does, and it's a fantastic weekend. I absolutely love it. The fact that we're all able to travel, you all get that travel element of getting down there. It was exciting. I travelled down, for the first time ever to playoffs, I travelled down with my wife and daughter on the train. In one part, it was an absolute nightmare. On the other part, it was actually really nice. Doing that nice, relaxed one. What I will say is getting the train with a hangover is absolutely horrendous.
Did you have a hangover?
Slight, very slight. I did eat 2 lovely sausage rolls on the walk to the train station. It did nothing.
Well, I agree with Marty. The city itself is it's a really nice city. There's plenty of things around. There's plenty of bars, plenty of restaurants.
It's geared towards it. The product, like you said, Marty, the product in the NIC is great. What they did is fantastic. I don't think it's as polished as what we would get in Belfast. I think the on-ice product would be better in Belfast. But Nottingham knows how to do a playoff weekend as a city. And it's so well versed in it now. It's 17 years, 18 years now, actually, after this season, where playoffs has been awarded in Nottingham. Look, they know how to do it. Let's just stick with what we know.
Yeah, and I think it's actually a really good thing that they have cemented the fact that they have got it there until 2029, and I think it's a great move. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we'll be back in the near future. Hopefully, if not next year, at least the year after. Anyway, so
take it to the bank now. I'm telling you now, we're doing the repeat next year.
Okay, there you go. Guys, let's move on to our next story. They came out just after playoff final weekend, and that was obviously the fact that, and it's no surprise, I think this is probably the worst kept secret ever, was the fact that the Nottingham Panthers confirmed that they would be parting ways with Corey Nielsen following the completion of the 2022-2023 season. We know Corey only came in as a stopgap, kind of as a temporary measure mid-season. And I know that they were kind of like, well, it wasn't always going to be it wasn't going to be a permanent thing there with Corey Nielsen, but they did confirm that Corey Nielsen was stepping down and moving away from the Nottingham Panthers, and they have signed 42-year-old Frenchman Jonathan Paredes. Paredes? Yeah, I'm going to say that. I think that's maybe potentially how you say it. And as the head coach for the 2023-2024 season. Omar Pasha has said Jonathan is one of the hottest coaches in demand at the moment, and we are very excited to have secured his signature. He has came from working in France national junior program, as well as taking the second tier team to how do you say that? John Line,
Sergi Pontois.
There you go. From the second tier to the top flight in 2019-2020, and has taken the same team to the semi-finals of the French playoffs. And he was also named Coach of the Year in 2021-2022. Obviously, it's exciting for them to obviously so early on so early on in the off season to announce their coach. So it puts a bit of comfort in the fact for those fans to know that the coach is in place and can start working on the team that's going to be coming in for the next season. I mean, another year, another Panthers coach. Aaron, I think there was a statistic earlier on. You were mentioning about a young GB player was put up on Team GB or someone put up a tweet. Do you have it handy there? I think it was.
I'm just bringing it up here. Hold on.
But I mean, we know that the Panthers have had some issues with their head coaches over the last number of years, and as you were saying, Aaron, that tweet kind of
So it came from @GB Hockey Future. Fun fact: assuming Jack Hopkins is back with Nottingham next year, Jonathan Paredes will be his 5th EIHL head coach. And Jack Hopkins is only 18 years old. So now there were a couple of people replying to that tweet, saying, "Can you name who's the 5th?" So it'll be around 4 or 5 head coaches.
Well, we know there was 2. We know there was 2 last year. They had 2 coaches over the course of last year.
Gary Graham, who got less than half a season before Corey came in, and then the season before you had a change out as well in Nottingham. You went from I think was it Mark Matheson to Tim Wallace.
Yeah.
Who was there? Or sorry, Tim Wallace to Mark Matheson. Tim Wallace had been the coach for a couple of seasons, and then he got his marching orders through the season as well. So, listen, the owner of that team has only got one team to pay attention to now, if the rumours are to be true, and we're going to talk about it.
Let's talk about that now.
Omar,
hold on.
Omar is a GM under pressure. Omar Pasha has to deliver something.
I was going to say, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead.
100 episodes and we still trip over each other. This is awful.
As ever. Well, what I was going to say, this is completely off topic, but I was, doing the normal research for based on the stories that we had. So I researched the guy that we were talking about. Jonathan. How do you say his surname?
Paredes.
Jonathan Paredes. So he shares a name with a Mexican high diver. So I just searched his name, and of course all these pictures of a Mexican, swimmer came up, and I was like, first thing I thought, can't wear that to ice hockey.
It's a bit chilly.
It's a bit chilly. Can't wear that. And then I realized, yes, that this is not the same guy.
Good thing you caught that on. It'd be very confusing if he turned up next season. You're like, why is it a pair of budgie smugglers on the ice?
Yes.
John, you kind of alluded to it there. Obviously, Neil Black doesn't have the attention on 2 teams potentially next year. Obviously, news coming out of Glasgow there.
Yeah, so not long after playoffs ended, in fact, I think it was maybe actually finals day, a news story broke coming direct from the Glasgow Clan, from Neil Black himself, was that the sale process of the club was nearing its end. TDL Media, who, if you don't know who they are, you probably do actually. because up until last season they were our main league sponsors, because that is the media conglomerate that were behind Premier Sports before that group was sold off to Viaplay. So that's kind of where the rumours, if you were around playoffs or kind of looking at social media just beforehand, there was a lot of rumours about Viaplay were in play to purchase the Glasgow Clan. Clearly that's not the case. People have just got their wires crossed on that one. So TDL Media look like they are going to step in and be the new owners of the Glasgow Clan. They apparently are just about to sign the line and are about to sign off as the anchor tenants or leaseholders for the arena as well. So once, I imagine there'll be an announcement in the next few weeks when that all comes, because the strange thing that you've got there again in Glasgow, look, they can be really, really pleased if they want to be that they've got Neil Black out. And I'll be the first one to say that I think a lot of things were mismanaged in Glasgow this season. Not least the communications that came around what happened, and look, that whether you agree with them or don't, that falls at Neil Black's door. That was a fan base who were up in arms, and they weren't really given much in the way of communication about what was happening. He then basically put out what looked like a tantrum statement, which said, time's come, I'm getting rid of this team. You're left putting a fan base in a position that they don't know if they're going to have a team next season, because you've got an owner who clearly doesn't want to be involved. But thankfully, he's kind of seen this through. I think what might have upset a few Glasgow fans is the fact that the hashtag back the bid, which was a Glasgow conglomerate, are not the preferred bidders. There've been quite a lot of chat around that, and from their communications around playoff weekend, they seem to suggest that Neil Black basically did not engage with them really after a certain point. Clearly, he has decided that TDL Media are who he wants to take the team forward as the new owners. So we can only hope that something comes out fairly soon, because that's a team that probably are going to be in some sort of rebuild mode. These are new owners, which means new contracts for everyone. So do we see all the backroom staff the same? Do we see the same GM? Do we see the same coaching staff and players? Who knows? I think now is probably more worrying a time to be a Glasgow fan than the last few months, really.
Yeah,
I've forgotten about that whole bit back the bid thing. That's
yeah, and I mean, you were saying about, obviously mishandled management of certain things as well, and signings and everything else that's happened there, and it's just like, you just think it's just, yeah, hopefully good times ahead for the Glasgow, and as you say, maybe the sooner that gets signed off and the sooner that gets completed, the better. You'd like to think that maybe that's going to be done and dusted by the time it comes to the owners' GM/owner conference meeting thing that happens at the start of May. Fixtures meeting, but also they have the general Elite League meeting, if you will, where they discuss the board, where they discuss import limits, which obviously is currently something that's being discussed at the moment. We know, as well as any kind of.
I think it's confirmed. It's 15.
I don't think it's officially been confirmed. I think it's a discussion. It's on discussion, and it's up for discussion at the GM meeting or the owners meeting in May. But I don't think it's been fully confirmed yet, has it? I don't think it's been press release been put out.
Maybe I'm getting it mixed up with the EIHL, who confirmed theirs.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, there's been no. I don't think there's been any official press release being put out to say of any changes to import levels. I think it's just been a discussion. I think it's been a rumor that's ongoing, but it's a strong rumor that we believe is possibly true. So we'll wait and see what happens there. So we'll hopefully, by the time it comes to our next podcast recording, that meeting might have happened, and there might be some news has came out of that. I know they do tend to start trickling some of that news out now quite quickly, which is good, which is more transparent than what's been previously. So hopefully something comes out of that and we'll know a bit more. And as we hope, hopefully Glasgow has everything signed, completed and done by that point, getting them off on a good start for the start of the season. Last story coming out of the playoff final weekend, following the playoff final weekend, is another change of coaching. So obviously we've seen a change of coaching in Nottingham, but also coming off the playoff final weekend, we have seen a change in coaching as the Devils announce that they are parting ways with their coaching team. Both Brodie Dupont and also Christian Horn have departed the Cardiff Devils. The Cardiff Devils will be looking for a new head coach to take over for the 2023-2024 season. I don't know if this came as a surprise. I know this was, again, another one of those rumours, another one of those murmurs that was going around in the arena itself over the weekend. I mean, did it come as any kind of surprise, John?
Generally, probably not. I think Brodie had been there a couple of seasons now, and I think with the exception of playoffs last year. For him anyway, I think that Cardiff were on for, was it a 3-peat or a 4-peat of playoffs? Really, we know that playoffs is valued because that's your championship that you can go into the off season as champions. It's the last piece of silverware on offer, but we are a league driven competition, if you like. Everyone wants the league, and they haven't won it. Nobody else other than Belfast has won it for a few years now. Nobody has held aloft that, was it 14,000 pound trophy, other than people wearing teal jerseys, and me, by the way. But no, it's not a surprise. You could kind of tell with Brodie over playoff weekend. I think you got the impression he was a guy who was playing for his job, or coaching for his job, effectively. And I think come the final result, it was no massive shock to see him out the door. And the journey begins again for Cardiff, looking for a new head coach.
Wasn't this the first time since 2014 that they weren't in the top 3?
That could be quite accurate, actually. Yeah, you could be 100% right there. Yeah.
Aaron coming out with the stats.
Boom. You're wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey, and Aaron's coming out with the stats. What is going on tonight? I mean, I'm gonna. I know Dave's not here, but me and Dave had quite an interesting conversation. Dave's not here, man. We had an interesting. Me and Dave had a conversation about this this past Wednesday at the game, and we were talking about the fact that obviously Brodie was there for just 2 seasons in Cardiff. You know, he got 2 seasons in Cardiff, and you know, we've seen the likes of other teams who have had coaches and they're parting ways with the coaches after 1 year and whatever else. We were looking at the fact that, you know, if we take a look at in our own arena, and we look at the numerous banners which are now up in the arena, including our 3 new banners. Did you know we won the treble this year? But we were looking at the banners, and obviously there's a gap in league, you know, between winning the league, the last time we won the league and the next time we won the league. There was a gap of about 4 or 5 years where, you know, we didn't win the league for a while. We won Challenge Cups, great, yeah, but we didn't win that. We didn't win the league since Paul 80's year, up to Adam Keefe winning it for the first time. But there's a gap of 4 years or so between those leagues, and we were talking about the game and the fact that, you know, is there an element of where coaches sometimes, especially new coaches to this league, aren't given enough time to learn and develop. Now, Adam came in as an assistant coach. He came in then as head coach, and he had a number of years to get before he won the league. He won the Challenge Cup. Yep, great. He didn't, but when he won the league, but it took him about 2 years to get to that point where he was able to win the league. Brodie came in again. Has, you know, is there an argument being made? Yeah, is there an argument being made though? Is there an argument being made? Is there an argument that should be made that, you know, obviously take Aaron Fox out because I think he's now in his 3rd year, but or is it his 2nd year? I don't know. But I mean, you know, is there an argument there where it should be? I think it's 2, where, you know, there's not enough time being allowed to kind of help
the ones that are
coaches
only
to develop before they're kicked.
Year, definitely. Like, was it Fife was the 1 year, but then. Well,
no. So Dundee.
Dundee.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Yes, the 1 years are. I have an issue with the 1 year coaching, because a coach coming in for 1 season, see that start of that season, that's not their team. They haven't recruited that team. They're coming in off the back of deals that were made by previous coaches and, look, by the ownership with the input from previous coaching squads. It's part of the reason why I was disappointed. I was chatting to a few friends that game after the Guildford game where the Giants lifted the league, and I went over to Dundee to watch them actually kind of get humped, but they paid for playoffs for me, so thanks very much, guys. But with the writing was on the wall. Mace looked like a guy who was effectively just there because it was expected of him. He looked like a guy who was out of a job at that point. I'm disappointed that he's not getting another year and getting the opportunity to build a team that's his, to give him the opportunity to build a hockey team around his identity, his coaching identity, and be able to coach it his way. But Mace is a coach that, connections-wise, look at the impact that the Friendship Four has had on EIHL hockey. Look at the names that are now spread across the vast majority of teams. I'm not going to say all of them because all of them haven't signed Friendship 4 guys. But Dundee could have had an opportunity there. Now, we haven't... I don't think we've heard... No, we have. We know Lefebvre is coming back. Sorry. So he's going to have good connections. But he's coming in at that point where he's going to be able to build a little bit of a team, let's say. A bit of a team. But ownership will have made a decision. The same goes for the Nottingham Panthers' new coach. There will be deals in place that this coach is going to have to deal with. Cardiff Devils' new coach is going to have exactly the same problem. There will be guys there on multi-year deals. Like, we know that multi-year deals in the EIHL mean absolutely nothing. They're not worth the paper that they're written on, even if they are written down. But I feel like a 1-year attempt isn't enough for any coach. Whether you are a Cardiff Devils and you're looking for league trophies and you're looking for playoffs and you're looking for Challenge Cups, you're looking for Grand Slams, or if you're the Fife Flyers and the Dundee Stars, where you're looking for basically anything you can get out of the season that's a positive, and hopefully being in the top 8 to make playoffs and get an extra couple of games and an extra couple of games worth of gate money to come through and give you a bit more coin for next season. There is an other side where some coaches have been given way too long. And I said it at the top, Fife Flyers. I have a lot of respect for what Dutz has done, not just in Fife, but in the Elite League. He was a Belfast Giant as well. He did a lot as a player and he continues to do a lot as a coach, and he is a fantastic guy. But I can't help but feel that the time is right for him to move on to something else. And the Fife Flyers fans and organisation are due change, and it has to come. So that there is a balance to strike. A losing coach is not always a losing coach, and a winning coach is not always a winning coach.
I mean, guys, there's so much more I feel like we could talk about around this subject, and there's also other things that I've really wanted to put into this episode and put into this period. But I just feel like we're going to run out of time because obviously we're already an hour into it. And
is one of them talking about how you embarrassed yourself in Hooters?
Let's move on.
Which was more embarrassing? What do you reckon?
Yeah, what was more embarrassing, Marty? The Hooters incident or the Besco incident?
The best coincidence by far. Yeah. That's just not. And I also should note, just for posterity as well, because Dave will be annoyed if I don't mention it. I also poured beer over Dave by mistake as well.
You did.
So I apologise for that too.
And he only had one jersey with him as well.
Let's move on. I did want to just briefly talk about it, and Anthony from Banners, I apologise. I don't want it to seem like it's just something we've stuck on to the end of this period, because I do want to talk. I would love to talk about it more, and I think actually it's worth getting you on at the start of next season to talk more in depth about the NIHL and about some of the thoughts around some of the things around how it's progressed this year. But I want to give a shout out to the Leeds Knights, obviously, who have had a phenomenal year this year, also taking the playoff championship there in the NIHL. I did have a couple of questions around the Leeds Knights and I want to get your thoughts and stuff, but we're just running out of time. But generally, just quickly, Leeds Knights had a phenomenal season this year. We've talked previously about the fact that there's certain teams within the NIHL that we feel could start to kind of develop more over the years, and maybe do we see some of them progressing onto the Elite League, in future times. I think the Leeds Knights is one to watch. That's all I'm going to say for now. I think it's something we can discuss maybe in a future episode. I don't know, but guys, if it's okay, I think we'll move on to our penalty box segment for period 1, because there is one penalty box coming from the NIHL that I think is really important for us to chat about. I want to get your thoughts on it. So let's take a quick look at our penalty box segment for period 1. Okay, the penalty box is just a little short part where we talk about any notable bans or any notable hits or anything coming from the Department of Player Safety in the Elite League or across the NIHL. And in this case, there is a story coming out of the NIHL. It's a disciplinary update that came out of the following the game against, I think it was the playoff semi-final game between the Solent Devils and Invicta Dynamos on Saturday 8th of April. In the closing moments of the South playoff semi-final game between the Solent Devils and the Invicta Dynamos, Invicta Dynamos forward Jurhei Huska Yeah. John, line.
Juraj Huska.
There you go. Juraj Huska. I was assessed a match penalty for interference with spectators. The incident took place at 59:24, immediately following Solon's equalising goal. Video footage from the game shows Huska unable to close down a shot from Solent, Matt's pit. Subsequent rebound is converted by Solent. Jamie Fitzpatrick, just as the goal goes in. Huska, who is now travelling away from the goal, turns just in time to see the goal going in, gliding backwards and approaching the end zone face-off dot. At this point, Huska then swings his stick with both arms in a baseball bat swing motion, spinning 180 degrees and released his grip on the stick, sending the stick in an upwards trajectory. Unfortunately, the stick travelled over the plexiglass and into the tiered seating, where it struck two supporters. In line with the 2022-2023 disciplinary policy, the active throwing equipment is split into 5 different tariff tiers due to the reckless nature of throwing the stick, along with the stick leaving the playing area and then the stick then striking two supporters. The incident has been judged to be a tariff 5, which is the highest tariff level. This has resulted in Huska has been suspended for 2 full seasons from the EIHL. 2 seasons. I mean, I'm going to start off and I'm going to give my thoughts, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. Effectively, this is ending this guy's career. You're not going to take a 2-year ban and go away for 2 years and come back. That's never going to happen. Effectively, that's him out of this league, and he's going to move on, and move on to somewhere else. I can't remember if the. I think it doesn't follow you. It just means in the elite league in the UK, in the UK, you can't play in the UK at any level. So he could probably go off back to the US or wherever it is.
He can't play in any IIHF affiliated league.
There you go.
We've had this before. We've had this conversation before where bans travel across leagues.
I mean, let's talk about it. 2 years, and I know like people will say, yeah, but he struck 2 fans. I agree, something should have been done. There should have been definitely taken into consideration the fact that 2 fans were struck by the stick, and I'm not defending that in any way because that is reckless. 2 fans were hit, and he should have had them hit. They should have been in the mind space to know, why did I do that? It was a throw, obviously, that I don't think he probably thought was going to go into the crowd over the plexi. From hearing things that is going on, there's no video being released, but from hearing things and from hearing what fans are saying, it didn't seem like it was an intentional thing for him to throw it over the plexi. I think he threw it up, and I think momentum has just carried it to that point. The question being is the fact that if we look at his disciplinary history, there's been no disciplinary before. There's been no instance of this before. And it's a case of heated moment in a semi-final where something's been tied up within the last minutes and there's been judged where he feels it was judged, ref judging was poor in this case, whatever that might be. I mean, 2 years, John, do you think, 2 years?
A 2-season ban is, I don't want to say it's unprecedented, but it feels unprecedented, and this feels very much because there's fan involvement that the EIHA have taken a stance, or the NIHL, have taken a stance on this, that they won't accept it. We've seen bans, we've seen lengthy bans before from across hockey for interaction with fans. We just have to look at Matt Nickerson. Now, that was a very different situation. That was a fan directly going in that one. I don't agree with that one either. I think that Matt was probably took it a bit too far, but effectively was protecting himself from that one. But again, that's not the incident we're talking about. 2 seasons does seem incredibly harsh, given Huska had a fairly clean disciplinary record up to this point. It is out of character. And to note as well, the Invicta Dynamos have put out a statement as well in support of Huska, and they've said that they feel it's incredibly harsh. They go on to say that Huska himself and the club management have personally apologised to the parties involved, and that was at the time, and ensured that they were all okay. The others that were affected were contacted the next day to make sure that they were all okay. So the organisation took a bit of ownership of this, as well as Huska himself. Now the club has said that they're going to take some time to figure out what their next step is with this. I feel like the club is not just going to walk away from this. They're not just going to walk away from Huska either. They're going to see where they can go and how they can support him, and I would expect some sort of appeal to come out of this one. It's interesting. I've spoken at length about how much I like the clarity and the transparency behind the EIHL's disciplinary section. This one seems uncharacteristically short for explanations from this disciplinary team. And I get it's the end of the season. It was effectively the second last game in the playoffs there. So it's uncharacteristic and it's sad to see, but I don't think this is the end of the story. And I hope it's not the end of the story either, because I don't think anyone should end their career this way.
What I know that you mentioned that it was a different type of incident, but we've had 2-3 stories like this before.
Yeah, I mean,
none of them were 2 seasons. How much was Nickerson's?
Matt's was 30 odd games.
Effectively
was a
close
big
to.
one. He effectively lost a season, and that's why he went elsewhere to. Well, actually, I can't remember if he went elsewhere to an unaffiliated league or if he actually just retired.
It just seems like, because that was, again, I appreciate that was slightly different, and that was actual interaction. Not that this wasn't actual interaction, but this was it was an accident. Like as Marty said, throwing a stick. It sounds like it was an accident. It just went a bit far and went over the plexi.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think the guy deserves to have his playing career, and let's be honest, like, the guy's playing in the EIHL. This isn't his main earner. He's doing this because he loves the game. So he doesn't deserve to have a semi-professional career taken away from him because of a heated moment and a poor decision on the ice. And look, everyone has said, and everyone's been on social media and said, the team themselves have said on social media, there have to be consequences and repercussions for these actions. Absolutely. Yeah. That sort of action, that sort of behaviour cannot be condoned. But this is incredibly harsh. There has to be a middle ground on this. And that's why I expect some sort of appeal to be lodged. And for them to ask for a little bit of leniency on this one. I would definitely expect this to be dialed back, because there's been so much chat online about how heavy-handed this ban seems to be.
I'd love to know more about what there's the Tower 5. So there's 5 towers or 5 levels. I'd love to know more about that. Like, is it like a tick box exercise? Is that
honestly,
like they just went tick 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 tick? Right, it's level 5, and that's this ban.
But it builds.
I think
it builds. So as you go through the tiers, the bans build up. And I think the transparency in the NIHL is really, really clear on that. And I think their rule book is like really available on their website. So it's probably something that we could research. We probably won't. We'll just ask Anthony when we get to the start of next season.
Which is what the plan is. Yep. Let's do that at the start of next season.
Anthony, get the answer written now. You've got a couple of months to get it ready.
I agree. I mean, I just feel that there's been a number of big bans over the years for as you say, you had the likes of Nickerson, and I think it was Derek Campbell in the Vipers. I think it was Derek Campbell. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. I'm sorry if I am wrong, but I know there was a Vipers player, I think, who also had an application in the who actually literally went get out of the rink and walked up into the tier and actually started basically fighting with a fan. And I know he took a lengthy ban to, I think it was nearly 52 games or something. I think, or something along those lines, again effectively for the season.
Look at what happened in Dundee a season and a bit ago. Fan throwing something on the ice and the player trying to have a go. Didn't turn into a massive ban, did it?
No. And I think what we should look at, what should be, is when you look at the fact that there was a physical altercation where there was an intent to hit someone, where you've got the Nickerson, and sorry to say, but when Nickerson had an intent there, it felt like an intent. He got aggressive, got angry at what was going on, and he lashed out and he'd done that. And the fact he got that, like the ban.
Like I said, it was a different situation, and Matt shouldn't have done what he did at that
point.
point.
And
but I still think that the ban he took was excessive for what happened. I think.
But what I'm trying,
Keens, and I think they had a responsibility there.
What I'm trying to put in perspective, though, is when you look at the fact that the length of bans that they got for physical altercations, and you take something that was maybe it wasn't a direct physical altercation, it wasn't a direct physical thing that was meant. It looked like it was something that
singled out those 2 people, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, maybe we will come back to this story. Maybe some more will come out of this over the season, over the off season. And if it does, we'll certainly come back to this story. Let's round off then period 1, guys. And I think we'll get stuck into our period 2 of hockey. And Aaron, I think you can introduce period 2.
Yay! Welcome to period 2 international hockey. I know this. This is our 100th episode. I know what period 2 is. Where we look at any hockey news across the pond and well anywhere else in the world. And just to keep the tradition going, Marty's done most of the legwork here. We're going to start off with one story that I even showed Amy, my wife, earlier, and she was like, "Oh, that looks horrible." And there's many things that can be said about it, but once we get this particular story, 85 stitches, Marty. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. This is the it was a how to describe it. I mean, in a game recently, the Morgan Barron. Have you seen the photograph? First off, the actual photograph of basically the blade in his face and his eye.
Yes,
I've seen the video. I've seen the video. Actually, I saw it when it happened, and is it the goalie skate?
Yes,
so
the goalie skate.
Yeah,
falls down and lifts his leg up, like curls his leg up, and at the same time, Barron's pushed down by another player, but not intentionally. Just I think in the everything that's like going commotion in front of the net, and then it's just bad timing as he's being pushed down, and as the goalie's skate is up, skate meets face, and then not even just meets face, but underneath, between the plexi of the helmet and the skin, so it gets up underneath the helmet as well.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. So
that sort of injury is brutal. One thing I completely forgot. You talk about him, how many stitches? 80 odd stitches or 75 stitches, and then comes back out into the play. Let's take it back to Nottingham. David Goodwin in the final, first period. I don't know if he took a puck or a stick or something to the face, but he was patched up and back out, and he was back and forward to the back room a couple of times through the first and second periods to get patched up again and again and again, and kept coming out. So look, it happens in hockey everywhere. I suppose my question with this is, and we've seen like hockey's riddled with like skate to person, skate to skin injuries. There's loads of famous ones with goalies with slashed throats. Probably
Evander
less
Kane.
famous is
Evander Kane earlier this season. Yep.
Probably less famous is Craig Peacock with his split lip.
Yep.
Or is it another element that adds to the argument for full cages, full time?
Well, let's
go for it.
I mean, sorry, Aaron. Sorry, go ahead. What are we doing this tonight? We're not gelling at all tonight here. Aaron, what were we going to say there?
No, I was just about to say, wasn't that one of the stories though, Murray? Was that the
so I think the argument has been, obviously, you know, Morgan had to have, as we said, 75 stitches after that first game, that first Stanley Cup game. The Jets were up against the Vegas Golden Knights. Unfortunately, as Aaron usually explained, there was a bit of I suppose, just a melee in the middle of front of the goaltender, and obviously he took the skate to the face. And John, you're right. I think what has came out of this then has been the discussion around, you know, we have seen this season, obviously following the Evander Kane issue with when his wrist was sliced open, and the sheer panic that happened at that point, where, you know, everything was going on, blood was going everywhere, the whole of the hand and everything else. We've seen the issues before where the reason why most goalies wear neck protection. Not a lot of goalies, actually. Some goalies don't, and there's actually a number of goalies in the elite league who don't, including our own Bester Ronnie.
Well, that's for the puck. That's for the puck specifically, to stop it going between the mask and the throat. They were
originally designed and brought out following the issue that happened with the goaltender, and the goaltender had his throat sliced because there was no protection around the neck, because they realized that the goaltender was the person who was going to potentially take more hits, because if you know, whenever they come in and they don't stop in time, the goaltender can be the one that gets taken out quickly in terms of that, and there's no defence around that. So there were one of the big reasons was around, yes, okay, it's to protect the neck from the puck, but one of the other reasons I believe, and remember reading at the time, was that it was added on as part of the helmet to protect the neck because of all that stuff that happened with the skate. So there is a discussion ongoing about whether or not this is going to raise questions over the off season about player safety, and whether or not something should be added on in terms of some kind of protection around face or neck for skate injuries to the face. I mean, as you say, I mean, he came back on, played away, and he's been on again. He's been playing ever since, and he's been wearing a full cage to play. Go forward to play. And we've seen it as well, where you said it yourself. We've seen people taking flish to the mound, whatever it is, and played on with full cages. So it's a question of, is it something we're going to see maybe more regularly? Is it something that's going to be a change? I know a lot of players from this happened and from the stories coming out to say, is there going to be a discussion around it? I know a lot of NHL players who've already come out and said, no, we don't want it. Like, we don't. That's not something we feel that we need. We don't think it's something.
The same argument was made whenever helmets were talked about being brought in, and they brought in the legacy rule, which was if you entered and were playing professionally before the helmet rule, then you didn't have to wear it. The same thing currently happens with warm-ups. I think the rule. I think there is a legacy rule that. I think the rule is you should wear head protection during warm-ups. But if you were playing before that, I don't think you have to. I might be wrong on that. Maybe you don't have to wear a helmet during warm-ups. But even in warm-ups, we see injuries happening as well. You see guys getting scratched because they've gotten injured during warm-ups. I think what will probably happen is that there will be step changes, whether it's the visors themselves get bigger and come down further, or do we see a move to the either steel cages or the plexi cages that we see? I mean, the juniors and college guys have to wear the full cage until they either age out or turn pro. Then they've got the choice. They can wear the full cage if they want to. I get it that there's probably an image thing as well. A lot of players won't want to wear the full cage because they'll be seen as being potentially soft targets on the ice. But I don't know, when you see injuries like that...
Go ahead. Like, I'll wear a cage.
Exactly. But that's what I was going to say. When you see injuries like that, I'll wear the cage. Yeah. If I could skate, like.
Yeah. There's also that.
So again, it's maybe just something that we may come back to over the next few months if it's something that does start to kind of maybe raise its head a bit more over the off season. Especially, obviously we know that during the off season we have similar to the Elite League, the GMs across the whole of the NHL will meet as well to discuss any kind of changes for the following season. So we'll see if anything does come off that. I don't think there will be anything, but you never know. There could be. One more story in this period before we move on, and that is the story of I think I'm right in saying it's probably one of the first announcements of retirement post-season, obviously post-regular season, I should say, and that is the announcement that current Flyers defenseman Justin Braun has announced his retirement from hockey after 13 seasons in the NHL. 36-year-old defenseman had 199 points in 842 regular games in regular season and 16 points in 119 Stanley Cup playoff games. Played with San Jose Sharks, Philadelphia Flyers, New York Rangers, and he did help the Sharks reach the Stanley Cup final in 2016. His numbers were quite low, obviously, this year for the Flyers. I think he only got.
I was going to ask there, Aaron, 2 points in 51 games. Was he the Flyers' top point scorer this year?
Anyway, I was going to go for a slightly different spin, and whether he was or not the top goal scorer of the season, I really like that. On his last game, everyone tried to get him around to get his 200 point because he had 199 points. 199. So for his last game, they done everything they could to try to get him to that 200 points, but it's the Flyers. We had a tough season, so it was a tough old game, and also that they had his dad on the bench for the last period.
Yep. Yeah, nice touch. And I'm sure there's been rumours out there, shall we say. This is obviously the first of the many retirement announcements we're maybe going to hear. But there has been murmurs and rumours of potentially at least another 3 or 4 potential retirements before the end of during the off season following the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's been a couple of players who've been touted as potentially announcing their retirements. and we'll see if any of that does happen. It was a
36 though. 36 and retiring.
36.
I appreciate it probably goes on and does something else, but imagine announcing your retirement at 36.
Yeah, I think that's why they're saying about there's potentially another 4 or 5 coming following the playoffs, because there's a few players currently in the Stanley Cup playoffs playing for the various teams who are in around that 36, 37, 38 age range, and I think they're talking that potentially that there's a couple of others who are going to announce retirements. So
it's funny you mention it, Aaron. At 36 years old, I'd like to formally announce that I am partially retiring and I'm going down to 4 days. Very
4
very
days
soon.
a week.
Yeah.
Just going to take this opportunity
Tom.
here to say that. Thank you very much. It's been hard fought for, and I'd like to thank everyone who helped me get to this point.
You're
wish you all the
1/5
best
retired.
1/5 retired. We wish you all the best for your future.
I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with all the spare time except look after my daughter.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, as your wife goes back to work, you're like, okay, great. Guys, that's it for period 2. No more stories for this period. So I think we'll move swiftly on to our period 3 of hockey.
Period 3 is our general knocky news.
Knocky news.
Knocky news is where we talk anything and everything else in the world of hockey that we don't think either fits into period 1 or 2, or we've just got too much in those 2 periods and we decide to throw some stuff into period 3 instead. What I do love from period 2, I'm just going to go back to it, is that before we actually went into period 2, Marty said to Aaron, "You can take it, Aaron," and then immediately took over. And didn't even let you round out the period.
Fine. It's fine. He knows what he's doing. He's like, again, it's the 100th episode. It's what happens all the time. He's
It's the 100th episode. It's the Marty Show.
It's the Marty Show.
Do you want to throw some beer around us as well, Marty?
We should rename it that, actually. Maybe that should be the title for this week's episode.
Episode 100, the M Show, the Marty Show.
Guys, in Knocky News, there is no better place to start than with the Hockey Can't Stop tour. An absolutely fantastic night in Belfast, where the Belfast Giants helped to support a fantastic cause for Ukrainian hockey. Marty, I know that you and Dave were there at the game. I'll openly admit I started watching the stream and then immediately had to go and parent. And didn't get a chance to get back and watch any of the rest of the game, unfortunately. But I did watch some of the highlights, watch some of the tweets that came out. You, I think, kind of took over our socials on that one, and just seeing the Bash Brothers back together again was something else. What was it like? What was the game like, Marty?
The game itself, let's start from the start and just talk about the whole thing, the whole purpose of that whole charity game and everything around it. Obviously, as we know, the charity game was kind of, I wouldn't say it came out quite short notice, but we didn't, within about 4 or 5 weeks ago, obviously, that we started seeing those teaser trailers around what was coming, and obviously the stick tape going on, and then we found out that there was going to be this charity game for Ukrainian hockey, and how about developing or making sure that Ukraine could still continue to have hockey moving forward, and development of hockey, and I suppose just the importance of that in terms of for the young people who play it, as well as the professional teams and everything else, in terms of the fact that it was so much destruction and the fact that a lot of it stopped because of the war that's currently going on between Russia and Ukraine. And the whole idea behind them was to kind of raise the money and raise awareness for Hockey Can't Stop and how important it is. And I think the first thing I should say about it is the fact that the Giants pull out all the stops. We talked about it earlier on. We know the SSE, we know the Giants can, as an organisation, can put on a phenomenal show. We know they can put their off-ice kind of production value in terms of videos, music, everything that's going on in terms of the fireworks, everything. We know that they can do it perfectly, and we know they're so good at doing it. And this was just on another level. Everything from the lighting was right, and the use of the blue and yellow lights. And I think the fact that they were drip feeding the Giants fans, the whole all-star team throughout 2 weeks leading up to it, and it was just beautiful seeing all of these old school players that we have missed. The likes of Saviano, who hasn't skipped a beat. He was phenomenal. Saviano was there. Tim Cook, not the Apple Tim Cook, the Giants, Tim Cook.
Yeah.
He was there as well, and again, it was great seeing him. As you say, John, we had the Bash brothers back. We had Adam and Loiter. We seen straight off first line was the first line in the first part of the game in the first period was a line of Lloyd, Garside, and Kiefer just starting it off, and it was just this sheer moment of just like, oh my god, goosebump moment.
That's a championship winning top line there.
I mean, it was phenomenal. I mean, we had likes of JJ Picanich on the ice again. You miss that man, and you miss that line of JJ, Goody, and Cons. I mean, it was just beautiful to see. But I mean, everything around it was phenomenal. The team that were over, obviously, as well. We should mention that the fact that it was just a phenomenal amount of money was raised. £50,000 was raised for the whole for the event, from the event. That's ticket prices. That's from sales of things on the night. I think 50-50 shut-off backs, that sort of thing as well, all going to the charity and the cause. And there's additional money I don't think has been added yet for the thing like the auction for the Boston jersey and everything else. I think that's still to be added
they say
to
that they have actually said how much that generated, and it generated £3,681.
Wow.
For the raffle for the Boston Bruins jersey from 2010.
Phenomenal. I mean, the whole thing itself, I mean, from right from the very start, one of the big things about it was, obviously, we talk about the All-Star team. One of the surprise announcements, which came as the only way I can describe it is we were there. We were obviously in the playoffs, and we were in the airport, and it was just this sudden. We were just standing in the airport. We're all me, Dave, and Aaron were standing. Well, I think Aaron, you were stuck. I think over.
I was away back somewhere.
Yeah, you got stuck in the non-priority line. We'd already got through somehow, and we were all standing, and all of a sudden we just all standing in the departure part, ready to go on the flight, and all of a sudden all I heard was, and let's just start getting louder and louder and louder. It was like Peter Cech from Chelsea, Peter Cech's coming to play, and it was just this whole big thing. People were like, Peter Cech's coming to play for Belfast in the All-Star game, and even that whole thing of being able to build that up. He was contacted on the Sunday night. So the Sunday final playoffs, wow. He was contacted on Sunday by Kiefer and the team in Belfast to say, we need a goaltender. Would there be any way you could come over to play in our All-Star game? Turns out Peter then paid for his own flight, paid for his own dime in terms of paying for his own accommodation, everything else, just to come over to play for the Belfast Giants for that game. Fair play to the man. He had stuff on Wednesday night, and he rescheduled whatever it was he had already in his diary so that he could come and play for the Belfast Giants for that one night only.
How'd he do?
Fantastic. That first period, he was amazing. Genuinely played really well in that first period. He was obviously pulled after the first period and a half. Actually, I think they played period and a half each. Him, and then obviously we had Dicko on there for the second half of the game. And yeah, but you know what? It was brilliant to watch him play, and he's got some moves. He's a bit bouncy. Like a lot of things bounce off him. He's a bit. I would say that, but. I mean, the guy can get down quite quick and fast, but again, he's a goalie for a football in a football league. A football team. He played UEFA Champions League. He played in the Premiership. I mean, the man's. You
heard it here first. Peter Cech goes down fast.
Marty,
I'd be remiss if I don't ask you though, because as part of the presentation of that night, a couple of things also happened. The final banner of the season was lifted to the rafters. Obviously, a good number of the players from this season were there. A few notable absentees, obviously for personal reasons, weren't in the arena. But we got to see that EIHL Playoff Champions 2022-23 banner get raised to the roof in the SSE. And the one and only Ryan McMullen was in Belfast.
This was my dying question. I was like, just tell me about this.
It's very quickly becoming the, if you want to call it, the unofficial theme tune of the Belfast Giants, Belfast City.
We jokingly said this. We were jokingly having a conversation with Mark and Katrina over the playoff final weekend, and I think it was Katrina. I think maybe had said that she was like, "Do you think when the players sign for the Belfast Giants, even though they come in at shorter, so like McLeod, for example, he's a good example. Do you think they're sat down and they're told, right, guys, you just signed up, but what you need to do is I'm going to give you these lyrics, and you need to go away and listen to this song and learn the lyrics for this song, because every single player knew the lyrics. Whenever we were singing it at playoff final weekend, all those players were singing it. But on that night, at that game, I mean." There's been many a time where I have been proud to call myself a Belfast Giant, and there's been many a time where I have stood in that arena and I have felt really proud of everything the Belfast Giants do and the production they do and just the sheer just, there is certain points, there's certain moments where you think about it. Like, you think about one of the big ones was whenever they play. Anytime I hear celebrate,
Embrace, yeah.
I get embrace, celebrate. I get a little bit like choked up.
Honestly, I nearly cry every single time I hear it.
But I will tell you now, standing in that arena on Wednesday night with Ryan McMullen playing Belfast City, the whole arena standing up and singing in the last part. Everybody joined in and sang at the last part. But seeing all those fans with their lights on around the arena, there's a moment, actually, if you look at the video, there's a video there. Someone took a video, and you can see me kind of, I'm just down below him, and you can see me literally at one point just like turning around, completely looking around me, because I'm like, oh my god. But goosebumps. I mean, my hairs were standing on my arms, and I was getting choked up because they put on video and stuff, and just everything about it was just sheer emotion. And I was honestly near tears. It was phenomenal, amazing. And speaking of tears, moving on, I will say that when they did the presentation check at the end of the game for that sheer amount of money, I am 100% convinced that the I don't know the man. I think it's his name. The president of the Ice Hockey Federation of the Ukraine and director of Ukrainian hockey is a guy called Georgy Zubko, who was the representative who was obviously there as part of the UK of Ukrainian hockey. And I genuinely think that in that last period and during that last moments of when everybody was just up, standing, cheering, I don't think that man stopped crying, because as soon as he got onto that ice and as soon as you seen him during that final part, you could see his eyes were just pure red. He'd been crying something shocking, and it was just, that was the whole emotion behind that whole night. And you know what, fair play for the Belfast Giants, and I mean, I don't think I've seen anything like it in my whole time as a Belfast Giant. And as I said at the start of the episode, seeing a practically sold out arena for a midweek game, off season, and a charity game, phenomenal.
That says something about the organisation, but it says something about the fan base as well, I think, more than anything. So obviously stick taps go to the organisation, the guys who stepped out on the ice for both teams, but also to each and every person who turned up on the night, anyone who's given money, anyone who bought any raffle tickets for anything that was there. Massive well done. You all deserve a pat on the back for that one, so well done. Guys, next one up, we've talked a little bit about silverware this podcast. There's another maybe less well known trophy in the hockey world is scheduled to come to the UK. Marty, the Stanley Cup is deciding to visit Nottingham.
Yeah, so this was announced by Ice Hockey UK. I think only today. I think this was announced. Yep. They have announced that the Stanley Cup will be coming to the Motorpoint Arena next week as part of the Team GB tournament that will be taking place over that weekend. Anyone who is in possession of a tournament pass or game day ticket for Friday the 5th of May will have the opportunity to take their photograph with the Stanley Cup in the Motorpoint Arena in Nottingham in the foyer throughout the whole day. The fact that it's coming along, the fact they've been able to get this to come along, and the fact that they're going to have it there is phenomenal. I don't think I did tweet it. I was about to tweet it earlier on, and then I kind of stopped myself a wee bit. I seen someone tweeted about, this is brilliant, the Stanley Cup's coming, and it's going to be in the Nottingham Arena, it's going to be in the Motorpoint. And I was going to tweet, I was going to say, well, at least it's Hockey UK or it's Team GB that is hosting this event, because if it was a certain other Nottingham team, you'd probably have the privilege of paying about a tenner to stand beside it and get a photograph taken, and then obviously have to pay an additional $5 to get an official photograph from the photographer who took it.
And it would be behind really grubby plexi too.
Yeah. So I mean, brilliant. If you're in and around, if you are going to the hockey, the Team GB tournament next weekend, the World Championships, if you are going along to those, make sure you do. If you've got a ticket for that Friday, it'd be stupid not to get down and get your photograph taken with the Stanley Cup.
You could fly in and fly out. It's only 116 quid for a wee flight.
I was going to say, guys, I've already got my photo with that. Did you know I was in Canada once and I went to the Hockey Hall of Fame and got my photo with the Stanley Cup?
Okay.
But were you wearing your media pass?
Not at the time, I wasn't, no. I paid for the privilege, actually, to get into the Hall of Fame. Guys, there's one last one. We thought about covering it in period 1, but I've pulled it across into period 3. Not so much in the same way that we've talked about this in previous seasons. Normally we talk about the EIHL playoff jersey auction, and we tend to concentrate more specifically on just how much money Guildford Flames fans are willing to part with for a jersey from their team. But this season, things took a different, went a very different way as soon as that auction went live. Guys, it's been all over social media. At one point, I think Tyler Beskorowany's jersey was going for over £1 billion.
Oh, I thought it went up to 25 mil. Did it go over for over a billion?
It went over £1 billion at one point.
Wasn't there a Devils jersey as well?
Yeah, there was two. I think it was Besko and Cochler, I think, were the two. Now, when this all first started, we saw Besko's was creeping up to about 1,000, and people started going, what is going on here? This is the first couple of days of this auction. Everyone needs to calm the F down. And then it just kept going and going and going. We got to like 25k, 50k, 100k. Everyone's going, no, this isn't right. Clearly, when it hit 1 million, something wasn't right. One of my favourite posts, I can't remember.
When it got to 1 million, you thought that it was clearly wasn't.
Listen, it's a Tyler Beskorowany jersey. Anything can happen here.
Did you see the tweet from his wife? The tweet from his wife, it was brilliant. I think it was only at that point, I don't even think it was in 1 million. I think it was like a couple of thousand at that point. And she tweeted, I have another 30 jerseys in the wardrobe if anybody else wants to buy one. It was brilliant. It was so good.
It was great. Absolutely brilliant. We're led to believe that it's all been fixed now, but I do believe that Besko's still went for an incredible amount of money.
I think it went for about 900 and something in the total overall.
Yeah, I'm trying to
finish now.
Yeah,
they all closed yesterday, I want to say.
901 pounds Besko's went for.
There you go, Marty. You were talking to us at playoffs, and you had us well warned that we were not to go anywhere near Norris's number 14 jersey. How did your bidding go on Norris's jersey?
I didn't. Oh. I didn't. I genuinely. I think I'm genuinely surprised this year. I mean, if the fact that the amount his jersey went for, if that's not an indication of what the fans want next year, I mean, if that's not an indication, then I don't know what is, because I don't know what the total was that Norris went for in the end.
Well, do you want to know?
Yes.
So, Norris's teal jersey, £850.
Whoa.
Norris's white jersey, which remained unworn, because he didn't play until playoff final weekend, £460.
Yeah. I mean, guys, and again, this is no comment to the fans who did put their money in and buy them. Fair enough. Maybe you've saved up your money and you didn't buy any jerseys this year to do this. Maybe you didn't buy any fifth shirt backs and stuff, and maybe that was the whole plan. It was you always like to auction going to these. I just think back to the days where, you know, we again, I'm not gonna sound like I'm an old man, but I remember the day. You know, the quality of the jersey now compared to a number of years ago is significantly more poor compared to what they were a number of years ago in terms of screen print versus stitched. And I just don't see how the money can get to that point where you're spending £1,000, £900 on jersey. Like, fair play, if you have the money, I'm not go for it. It's a piece of merchandise, and it's a piece of it's memorabilia that is a part of the history of this club, especially because it's a treble-winning season, and you know, fair play if you have the money, great. But I just think, as soon as I seen, as you joking around, John, about me wanting to bid on Norris's, I was legitimately going to bid on Norris's jersey. I was, because it's number 14. We're number 14. We love the number 14. I was going to bid on a jersey, but see, as soon as it hit silly prices, I was just like, no way.
Can I just lay it out there? Like, Norris's jersey, don't get me wrong. He was fantastic. He gave his time absolutely freely to me on both days after both games. Obviously, man of the match performance in the semi-final. Scored the winning goal effectively in that game. Ori's jersey, though, was his teal jersey is the championship goal winning jersey, and it went for just over half of what Norris's went for. If I was bidding for a jersey from playoffs, and Marty, exactly the same reason I said to you at playoff weekend, I won't be bidding for those because I don't like those jerseys. I don't like the screen print. The quality looks pretty terrible, to be honest. But that's a championship winning, treble winning, Grand Slam winning jersey, and the teal one went for £460. £400 less than Sean Norris's jersey.
Yep.
I mean, that is mental.
I have the overall totals for each of the teams. If you want to hear any of those,
Go for it.
So overall, the highest bids and the team with the highest amount was the Belfast Giants with a total of £21,601. The Cardiff Devils were second with 18,578, and the Sheffield Steelers were third with 16,444. And Nottingham Panthers, obviously the top four who were in the final weekend. Nottingham Panthers went for £16,052. After that, Guildford's went for 15,600. Glasgow Clan 14,000. That we had Coventry Blaze 6,900, and then down to Dundee Stars 4,800. Manchester Storm 4,300, and Fife Flyers 3,600. So, yeah,
That says something to
21,000.
3,000, 21,000. Obviously, 21,000 is the championship winning team, but
But that says something to me as well. You've got the 10th place team who didn't make playoffs.
Yep.
Who still, and sorry, two teams who didn't make playoffs. Yes, Fife came bottom in there and they didn't make playoffs either. Who was the team second from bottom? Manchester?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They did make playoffs. They did wear those jerseys. So actually, Dundee made more for the league and never wore them than a team who actually wore their jerseys for playoffs.
Yep.
That seems mental to me.
John O'Phillips' jersey was the second highest amount at £1,010.
How much?
Yeah, £1,010.
Wow.
So there you go. Yeah, I can see here actually Norse was in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Norse was in the top 10. He was 7th in the top 10. Norse's jersey. I've just seen it here on the list.
It's madness.
There you go.
Well, do you know what? Congratulations to every one of you who's got a playoff jersey, because if you wanted it, you went out and you bought them. So well done. You've got a piece of history right there.
I was really looking forward to see how the league was going to spend 25 million. To be fair,
I saw a post. What was it? We'll absolutely walk the CHL because Belfast will be able to afford to sign what was it, McKinnon and McDavid for on 1 season deals.
Amazing. John, I think, is that us for this period?
That's us for period 3. I don't see anything else there, but as usual, you've probably got something from someone.
Nope, that's it. I don't have anything either.
Mark, what are you doing? Last episode of the season and there's nothing in Mark's corner.
Nope, nothing. Don't have anything. That's it. That's us for this episode, but also that's it for this season. That's us putting a stamp and closing the page on the 2022-2023 Elite League season. We will be back, as I say, during the off season, the odd month here and there, maybe one off each month, just to kind of give a bit of an update of things and progressions of how things are moving forward with signings and everything else, and any changes that might occur during our off season. It's been a fantastic year. I just want to thank you guys for coming along each week or each fortnight and joining me and putting your 2 cents in and helping out with it, and obviously putting in the work as well for this podcast. Obviously, you guys help me by just filling all the blanks. I ask the questions and you answer all the questions. So it's easy for me.
Marty, I think I speak for the 3 of us, even though Dave's not here. I'm going to presume to speak for him, and Aaron, I'm going to presume to speak for you as well when I say there is no podcast without Marty. He continually picks up the slack. We have a Google document that goes up live, usually about a week before each podcast. And let's be perfectly honest, if it's not 100% of the work, it's about 99% of the input on that comes from Marty. So,
from Marty.
Marty, from us, thank you very much, because without you, we would not have just recorded episode 100 of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast.
Yeah, that was episode 100, which is, I think, monumental for us. I think it's fantastic we've got to this point, and let's just say, let's hope for 100 more. Maybe it'll take the same amount of time, but we will be back next season. I think we've all had conversations during the playoff final weekend, and I think if anything coming out of the playoff final weekend, it's made us a bit more hungry for wanting to do more of the same in terms of like maybe thinking bigger in terms of what we want to do. John, do you have a media pass? I
do have a media pass.
I mean,
well, maybe finish ABC of Hockey next season.
Maybe we'll do that too. Yeah, let's get that finished for our next segment, which we're going to try and start as well. So Aaron, maybe we should do that during the off season, get that finished, so that for the new season start, we can start our new
That should only have taken 26 episodes. Let's be perfectly honest.
What, 3 seasons now?
Something's not making sense on the maths here.
But if you have listened,
alphabet.
if this is your first episode listening to our podcast, we hope you enjoyed it. Please come back next season or during our off season and listen to more and hear more of our rambling on. Thank you to everyone this season who has contributed through questions, who's come up to us and said they've enjoyed the content that we've put out. Thank you to everybody who came up to us at playoff finals weekend and told us about they had already heard about the podcast, they knew about the podcast, and they didn't need one of our business cards. So thank you very much for everyone who has came and said hello.
And all the helpers that gave out.
And our helpers that give out our... Yeah, let's thank that too.
Except
guys,
bunkers. Screw you guys.
With that, I think we will sign off for this episode, and we will do that as we always do. Check out this episode and all the other episodes on our website at door14hockey.com. Check us out on your podcast provider of choice, wherever that might be, whether that is Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts.
That's not on the business cards.
It's not. Please like, subscribe, and leave comments. It really does help us, and we appreciate any kind of support you can give us. Apart from that, you can check out our social media channels. We're on all social media at Door14Hockey. So Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. John, I think you might have more Facebook to do from next year, because I think we've seen our Facebook followers increase, not just Campbell anymore.
Campbell set up more accounts.
He must have. So thank you very much for everything this season, and that just leaves us then to sign off for this week and for the season. My name is Marty.
I'm John.
I'm Aaron.
Have a great week.